Good evening. My name is Bob Greenfield. This is the Chester Development Review Board that I'd like to introduce to you. On my far left is Philip Perla. To his right is Harry Goodell. Our town council, Jim Carroll, is here this evening. Again, I'm Bob Greenfield. To my right is Scott McDonald. To Scott's right is Gary Kroger. And to Gary's right is our planning administrator, Preston Bristow. I'd like to take a minute to set some ground rules here. Number one, the 5 people that are on the Development Review Board, Gary, Scott, myself, Harry, and Phil, are volunteers for the town of Chester. We don't get paid. We're here to enforce the Planning Committee's bylaws and ordinances. We're going to deal with this hearing with a lot of respect. There might be differences of opinion, but it's not going to get personal. If it does, I will call a recess and we'll take 10 minutes to cool down. There's not going to be yelling and screaming. There's not going to be name calling, any of that. Just want to put it out there. This is a hearing that we have to abide by. We have a lot of information here that we need to get through. People have a lot of opinions about this hearing. So, and I'm very thankful that you're all here. So if we can get started, I'd like to start with our agenda that we don't have. But did everybody sign the sign-in sheet?
I think it's working its way around.
Okay. We also have been updated with a microphone that can come to your seat. So I've been told. This is Kathy Hasbrook, who I forgot to introduce.
So another ground rule. The official record of this hearing is the recording. And the only way your voice is going to make it onto the recording is if you speak in a mic and we hear it through the speakers. So I have this mic for the audience. I'll pass it around when you need to, when you're ready to speak. But all of the DRB members and all the people who are testifying need to be sure that their voice is coming through those speakers so it's on the tape. Thanks.
Before we get started on the hearing, are there any citizens that would like to make a comment regarding anything else other than the hearing that we're all here for? Thank you. We are hearing DRB case 594, Julia Materials LLC. And let me ask our DRB members, does anybody have a conflict of interest? No. Has anybody had any ex parte communication regarding this hearing?
No.
Those that would like to give testimony, I assume there are some of you here, I would like to swear you in so the testimony you give will be recorded, and that is your testimony. Please be aware that there are representatives of some of the people here that may have an opportunity to cross-examine your testimony. Maybe not tonight, but at a later date. All right? So anybody who would like to give testimony would raise their right hand, and I'll swear you in.
Could I just comment that anyone here that's signed an affidavit and given it to me, please raise your right hand. That way we get you sworn in. We're submitting affidavits of their testimony to speed things along. So.
Yeah, also, if you're on the fence about speaking, and you may wind up finding yourself thinking that there's something you'd like to add, raise your hand just in case now, so it saves us time later. There you go.
To ask people to say their names?
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
Look.
I'd be happy to do the swearing.
No. Sure. Our town council's going to do the swearing.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and get some names?
Sure. I could just pass it around, do you think? Or?
Yeah, so I think what Kathy is, did I get that right?
Yeah.
Is suggesting is that people who might want to testify here tonight in addition to raising your hands, I think it would be good if we went around and got the names of the people who might be looking to testify. So I don't know if you
I can
want,
pass the mic?
Pass
You can
the mic.
Say your name into the
or
mic?
just go up and down the aisle and
Yeah.
sort out who might be interested in testifying.
Jim, I was wondering, if those people that are submitting affidavits, if they could just identify the fact that they are submitting the affidavit?
That's fine.
Because then we're just going to let them all go in.
Yeah, that's
But I
fine.
think drawing the name to the paper is a good idea.
But that sounds fine.
Thank you.
So, all right. You're going to be giving testimony?
Hi, Scott Kilgus, and I did submit an affidavit.
Leslie Thorson, affidavit. Priscilla Melanson, affidavit.
Rennie Melanson, affidavit. John Novak, affidavit. Michael Kenworthy, affidavit.
Chris Marks, neighbor to the Chandler Quarry.
Mike Leclerc, affidavit.
Cheryl Leclerc, affidavit.
Bob McAllister, affidavit.
Karen McAllister, affidavit.
Steve Green, affidavit. Barry Goodrich, affidavit.
And, there you go, sorry.
And Rick Alexander, affidavit.
Okay.
Is that everybody? Great, so if all of you who just provided your names would raise your hands, please. And do you swear or affirm the evidence given in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, we have quite a few exhibits that have been submitted regarding this hearing. We're going to take a group approach and start entering these exhibits into the record.
If I could, Chair, I think these two need to swear as well. I don't know if they held their hands up.
We want our names for the record.
Oh, Yeah, yeah.
witnesses.
Let's, yeah, so say your name and,
Into the microphone. that'd be great.
microphone.
Jeremy Matoski, Trudell Consulting Engineers. I'm the engineer for the applicant. And
Thank you.
And Colin Johnson, engineer from Trudell.
And I take it you just swore the oath?
did.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have quite a few exhibits, and I'll start with Exhibit A, which is the application for hearing before the Development Review Board. That is DRB case number 594, dated 5/31/2023.
Move to accept?
Yeah.
Moved by Harry, second by,
Phil, second.
all in favor? Exhibit A?
Aye.
Okay, we're just going to go through these.
Okay. Yep.
Wait,
Chair, I think there's a stipulation on the affidavits. We can speed this up a lot for you if you want.
I'm sorry, Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, let me, usually people say, would I speak quieter? We have an agreement on the exhibits that we're not going to object to the exhibits, and we can just get them in, and that will save you a lot of time. Then you can have one blanket motion if you'd like to save it half hour.
That might make sense in terms of one blanket motion, but I think for the purposes of the record, it's important that Bob go through them and at least identify for the record
So,
what the
Yes.
exhibits
they're-
are.
they're-
And then one motion.
And then one motion to
Yeah.
admit all of them.
That would be good.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
If that's acceptable to the DRB.
You good with that? Gary? You good, Phil? Yeah, sure. Thank you. Exhibit B is a warning from the town of Chester, dated August 4th, 2023. Exhibit C is a list of 100 foot abutters mailed August 25th, 2023. Exhibit D is a letter from Preston Bristow regarding,
Preston Bristow from TCE Engineers.
oh, it's to Preston, from CTE Engineers regarding the hearing. That would be Exhibit D. Exhibit E being more information from CTE VT Engineers regarding the hearing. Exhibit F, G, and H are photographs of, I'm not sure what.
Proposed steel building, I believe.
Yeah, it looks like a structure.
Is it proposed or is it existing?
Proposed.
Proposed, okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, it's TCE like Tom, Charlie, Edward.
I was misrepresenting
Yeah,
it.
that's my firm.
CTE VT?
TCE.
CTE
Tom, Charlie, Edward.
TCE
Thank you, sir.
VT. My fault. Exhibit I is from Fitzgerald Environmental Associates regarding the hearing, which is a overview of the floodplain information regarding the hearing. Dated May 19th, 2023, that would be Exhibit I. Exhibit J is from RSG, I believe, regarding a noise assessment regarding the Julian quarries. Am I good on that one? Yep. And then it goes to Exhibit E, which is a natural resource map dated,
Did we get, I'm sorry, Bob, did we get K?
J was this exhibit.
Right, and then I'm having a K.
Yeah, we got a
This
K.
exhibit right here.
This is K.
Yeah,
Let's go.
there it
Okay.
is.
Thank you.
It's Exhibit K, and these are
It's actually, each sheet is K, L, M, N. Each sheet is a separate exhibit.
Exhibit K through, I believe it's
Double D.
DD, which are site plans for Allstone, Vermont.
What's the date on these, Bob?
The date is July 6th, 2023.
Okay. Is that a last revision date?
No.
What I got today.
Last revised, great, yep.
All right. So I got through DD. It was all part of the map.
Yep.
Did E already.
We're EE.
Yeah.
From TCE Engineers regarding the Allstone Quarry on Chandler Road from March 9th, 2023. That would be Exhibit EE. And I have a technical memorandum from Roger Dickinson, PE, regarding a traffic impact assessment, and that would be Exhibit FF. There's a lot of trees that gave their life for these exhibits. And that is dated 7/7/23.
I have 7/6.
I have 7/6, this is 7.
Yep.
All right, those are all the exhibits we have.
We have Exhibit 001 through 008, I believe, which are letters from abutters.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, I believe those are all admitted.
Affidavits.
Yes.
That, and And those are fine as well.
We just
And
have one more exhibit, would be GG, which is the PowerPoint we're going to do tonight. They asked us to submit it, so we have.
Okay.
And that would be Exhibit GG?
Yes.
Correct?
So are you going to be submitting that electronically, basically,
I
sending it
think it already has
electronically?
been.
Correct, we did that earlier today at the request of the town.
All right.
And who was it, just for clarity purposes, was it sent to the zoning administrator, is that?
Yes, it was sent to zoning administrator Preston.
All right.
I have received it,
The
yes.
letters and affidavits identified them too.
Yeah, I think so. So I hate to say it, Bob, but I think with regard to each of those affidavits.
Okay.
One
I'm just
through, it looks like 8. They ought to
Sure.
be just identified in terms of who the persons are.
So if it's Exhibit GG?
No,
G- are we at
GG is the PowerPoint.
GG is the PowerPoint?
That's what we're proposing.
So FF would be the affidavits?
So these are all,
No,
we're starting
FF.
with numbers with
So-
these guys because they're interested
So
parties.
so it's, how about HH? Or would
No,
be-
no, so their exhibits are numbered, ours are lettered, so theirs will be 1, 2, 3, 4.
So, and my guess is each one of them, if you keep.
Yeah,
turning-
each of those is
Yeah,
a separate
2,
affidavit.
3, yeah, exactly.
How
So
about,
each one is a separate affidavit, but it would be good, I think, to put the date of the affidavit and, or the submission and the author
And
into the
if I
record.
could interrupt for a moment. And today I submitted revised and expanded affidavits for most of the neighbors that are on that list. And those were just submitted this afternoon. I don't know, Preston, if you've had a chance to look at them.
I've had a chance to look at them, but I
No.
haven't made a list. I thought you would present them tonight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so those would, the exhibits that in hand I gave the originals to the board tonight, those expand the letters that some of the neighbors have written, and they get a little more focused where they don't deal with issues that are really not
yeah.
germane to the topic before the board, which is always helpful to clean up.
So why don't we, if it's all right, Bob, just start with getting 1 through 8 in, and then we'll
And we'll deal with
turn to,
those.
yeah, we'll turn to yours. So if you go through each one of those and just indicate who the author is and the date and the
Okay.
exhibit number, I think that would be great.
Exhibit 1 is dated 6/24/2023, and that's by Michael Huffmeyer. Exhibit 2 is June 27th, 2023, by Barry Goodrich. Exhibit 3 is dated July 2nd, 2023, and that is from Leslie Thornton, and we have the date of July 2nd, 2023. I have another affidavit, Exhibit 4, dated July 2nd, 2023, and that is by Scott Kilgus. I have Exhibit number 5, dated July 7th, 2023, from Michael Leclerc. That's an 8-pager, 10, 12. I have Exhibit number 6, dated July 4th, 2023, from Roberta Alexander, if I'm reading that correctly. I have Exhibit number 7, dated July 6th, 2023, from Karen and Bob McAllister. And I have Exhibit number 8, dated July 14th, 2023, from Leslie Thornton as well. Is that it, Steve?
Those
No,
are the
no,
previously
those are the
filed, and
ones that-
today I filed and deposited with the
There's
board.
these as well.
Okay.
I mean, we can go through those as well. Before you do those, it's my understanding that, at least with regard to the attorneys who are representing parties here, that everybody's stipulated to the admission of all of these documents that are being read into the record, including the ones that Steve has just submitted?
Yes, this is Jim Dumont speaking on behalf of Leslie and Scott. Some of, I think, 1 through 7 were letters, but we're treating them as affidavits.
Right.
And number 8, which is actually a formal affidavit that Leslie submitted, is also an affidavit. And yes, we've agreed to stipulate to the mission of all the exhibits, including affidavits and letters.
Okay.
Yes.
And that includes what Steve is submitting
Yes,
here
I've
today?
talked to Steve beforehand, and we'll accept those.
Okay, great, super. And so what Steve has submitted here looks like it's 9.
And I can point out.
9, 10, 11, 12.
I can point out for
17.
assistance that number 2, Barry Goodrich, is replaced by an affidavit. Number 5, Michael Leclerc, and is replaced by an affidavit. Number 7, the McAllisters are replaced by an affidavit. So just to assist you, that
Sure.
you could, that'll just, to assist you.
Yeah.
Go through.
So I think, Bob, if you can read those into the record in terms of
You got it.
identity and date, then we can en masse entertain a motion.
All righty. I have exhibit number 9, dated there is no date we can use today. The 11th of September 2023, signed by Robert and Karen McAllister. 9, exhibit number 10. Dated September 11th, 2023, by Michael and Cheryl Leclerc. Have exhibit number 11, Barry Goodrich, dated September 11th, 2023. Exhibit number 12, Michael W. Kenworthy, dated September 11th, 2023. Exhibit number 13 by John V. Nowak, dated September 11th, 2023. Exhibit number 14, affidavit of Renee Melanson and Patricia Melanson, dated September 11th, 2023.
Priscilla?
No,
Priscilla.
September 8th. Somebody was early.
My name is Priscilla, not
Priscilla.
please.
Priscilla. I said, if I misspoke it, I apologize. An affidavit by Stephen Green, dated September 11th, 2023. I'm missing number 16. I have 15 and 17. Do we have a 16?
They're numbering.
Yeah.
Preston was numbering.
Unless I put two together here.
14 was Renee and Priscilla.
We're going to skip 16.
We have exhibit number 17, which is an affidavit by 10 or more persons petition regarding Julian Materials, North Quarry, South Quarry, and Chandler Road conditional use applications. And that is dated,
Dates probably, huh?
but none,
Undated.
undated.
Okay.
We'll take it into the record September 11th, 2023. All righty.
There.
Phew. Do I have a motion to accept the exhibits?
So moved.
As moved by Harry, second by Phil. All in favor of accepting the exhibits as presented?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It was a while.
It saves a lot of time.
Yeah, it does.
We're moving on to Exhibit GG, which is a narrative, a PowerPoint presentation by,
Have we identified the attorneys and who they represent yet?
Well, I think we have some notices of appearance.
Yes.
I think we received yours today, Mark, and I think Jim has done that. And
I did too, and I listed the people.
was it today? Because I guess
Today,
I didn't
yeah.
see that. Okay. So, thank you for doing that. Do you have a,
It's all the people listed
On the petition?
exhibits that we submitted today, which includes the 10 or more petition.
Okay.
And the affidavits,
Okay.
everything from number
Nine?
9 on.
On
Okay.
are people you represent?
That's who I represent.
Okay.
Jim, it would be helpful for me to know, is there anybody that swore or put in something that's pro se and is not represented by either Jim or Steve that's here? I just want to make sure I don't send something to somebody who's
No,
represented
it's
by
a fair
accident.
question, Mark. Is there anybody here who has submitted something to the zoning office in connection with this hearing who is not represented by an attorney here? We don't want to miss anything. So has anybody submitted anything at this point in time? Yes, sir, gentleman in the back.
Well, we could ask a question and see if they answer.
You know what, were they looking for, did they try to log on to the meeting off the website? And was the DRB meeting?
It does look like it's frozen.
There's people there. You
There, I see movement, yeah. Seems like it's working.
Can the people that are on Zoom hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear your voice.
Maureen Stevens,
Yes, I can hear your voice.
Mike Huffmeyer,
Yep, I can hear you.
Gary Neff. Can you hear my voice?
He's muted, but we know it works.
If you could unmute that and affirm that you're hearing my voice. There you go.
I think he's.
We don't need to worry
All
about
right.
one person.
But you can hear us. All righty.
So, you didn't have anything else to submit, right? So you were just checking on the Zoom? Okay, good. So I think we're all set, Mark.
So we've identified effectively the interested parties, as I understand it?
What's that?
We've identified all the interested parties thus far that are attending?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've identified everybody who has filed something at this point. I don't know that the board has made any formal rulings in connection with interested party status. But people who are looking to participate have obviously filed something, and it appears that the people who have filed something at this point are all represented by counsel.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you can grab a microphone or...
You can take one of those right out.
Thank you. Again, I'm Jeremy Matoski. I'm the engineer for the applicant here. My firm is Trudell Consulting Engineers. Colin Johnson is here with me as well. He's done some of the preparation for this. Yep, absolutely. I'll try to speak up and to the microphone. And I think if I
Can you
can...
hear him now, if he holds it closer?
If I hear my voice on the speakers, I was told it's on the recording. Awesome, thank you. So a little different, I did a PowerPoint for this hearing just to try to keep things moving along. We just heard that that was put into the record, so I will try to, again, be as expeditious as the chair, getting all of those exhibits in. I don't want to belabor anything, but I also don't want to leave anything. So we have an agenda outlined on page 2, and I hope, is it Susan is listening? Is that right? And will track along with me here on the screen. So the first page is just the cover. The second page is the agenda. Can we roll that to the next slide, please? Thank you. So again, these are the points that I want to make. And forgive me, it's a little bit long. There's about 50-something pages in here, but we'll go through it as quickly as possible. And as I understand this, since they're on the record and they've been submitted as exhibits, people can take their time later to review this in more detail, right? So I don't need to read everything verbatim, but I did just want to kind of introduce what we're doing here. The first page here, this introduction, if you could put that slide up that says introduction. Thank you.
If I could, I'm going to interrupt just briefly. This is a 50-page document. None of us have seen it before. I understand we need to go forward But I have to request that Mr. Husky will be available at the next hearing, so we can ask some questions based on actually reading the document.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for agreeing to that.
Mr. Dumont and I go way back. I made a copy for you.
Well, thank you. I'll read it tonight. It's not color.
When you can't sleep.
Yeah, not on the way home.
So this is just a quick overview excerpt from, most of it's from their website, I believe, just talking about what Allstone does. Allstone is a producer of a variety of different stone materials, thin stone, field stone, that type of thing. So the purposes mostly of what they produce here in Chester is for the type of architectural stone that you see on this chimney in this picture, or anyone who, obviously is familiar with the beautiful stone in Chester and all these beautiful colors. At the heart of what we're doing here, that's what they're trying to produce. And then they have a variety of sizes of that material as well. So it may be a veneer like this, or it may be a fieldstone wall, or different types of flagstone where you might be walking on it. And so ultimately that's the product. There's other product that these quarries can produce in an aggregate format, but primarily their business is selling this type of architectural stone. Next slide, please. So what I thought I would do, just to try to, again, be as efficient as I could with my time, just outline some of the operating parameters. We can move to the next slide. That was just a cover sheet. And I noted the Act 250 permits that are on record for this site, although I wanted to emphasize, we're not talking about Act 250 tonight. This is simply, or not simply, but this is a local hearing. So we're going to focus on the local issues tonight. But in those Act 250 permits, they outline some additional things that are not part of the local process and specified like hours of operation where that wasn't included in the Act 250, in the local permit, to the best of my knowledge. So they operate 7 to 5, Monday through Saturday, no blasting or drilling on Saturdays, drilling limited to 20 hours per month. Again, that's an Act 250 condition. Before I go through that, there's 3 different quarries. Hopefully everyone understands the project, but I'll do kind of a quick overview before I go further into all these approvals. But when I talk about the 3 quarries, maybe Colin can pull up the right map, but on the top, we've got this map where we show the 300-acre site off of Vermont 103, and then there's another 8.7-acre site off of Chandler Road at 137 Chandler Road. So they all own and operate 3 distinct different quarries here in Chester, 2 of which are located on this large parcel along 103 in Gassets, near what they call the Stone Store, their retail operation. And then again, they have an existing quarry over off of Chandler Road where they do some of the material as well. Moving on through the PowerPoint, I just made some copies of some of the old approvals here. The last time this facility, and specifically the 300-acre site, is the one that was issued a permit in 2003. And I refer to that as the South Quarry, which is the southernmost of the 2 quarries that operate there. That was approved, like I said, back in 2003, and it was under different ownership at that time, although it was under a company called Allstone, I believe. Since then, the Julian Family Materials LLC has purchased both of these properties and operates them today. Moving again, just for the record, through some existing conditions from the old permit in 2003 in here, so we could talk about that a little bit. And notably, the town approvals for the new quarry at that time did not contain any limits of hours of operation. Like I said, those were added later at the Act 250 level. And then trucking was limited to 40 trips per day. There's a typo there. It should be from North and South Quarry. Moving on to proposed changes, the slide, what we're doing here today. This is what everybody wants to know. And we're seeking a conditional use permit at the request of the town. The applicant was issued a letter to come in and talk about changes that have occurred at the site. And we're proposing to relocate and consolidate our stone processing operations. Currently, they move material from the north and south quarries on the 300-acre lot on 103 over to the Chandler Road facility. And what we're proposing to do is switch that order of operations, where we would export material from Chandler, which is an old grandfathered quarry on about 8.5 acres, move that material over to the south quarry, build a processing building and facility there, and then consolidate those operations so that material doesn't have to be trucked to and from Chandler. It'll simply be trucked away from Chandler, away from the north quarry we'll get to in a minute. We're going to be sunsetting that one, and then process strictly at the south quarry, which on my map here is behind the stone store, as everybody in the audience. This is the 300 acres in that little gray building we call the stone store, and then behind that there's an access road that goes up to what was previously approved as the south quarry, and then the north quarry is obviously on the northern part of the land. On this map, north is not up, north is to the right. And that's the one that's near the bridge where the Williams River goes under Vermont 103. And these are the only two access points to this larger parcel at the north and south. So, following along here a little bit, again, what we're proposing is about a 20,000 square foot new building. There's some images that were submitted, standard metal building with garage doors. Those doors will face the mountain so that when they're open, the noise will be into the hill. And then the site is being lowered from what was originally proposed about 30 feet to allow that building to be sunk further into the ground. And again, those are measures to help with noise abatement. And we're estimating it'll take about 12 to 18 months to get this transition completed. So we're asking the board to consider the time frame associated with moving those operations over to the new site and building this building. And then this is next slide, Exhibit O, is just an overview showing the relationship between Chandler Road site and the existing two quarries. And then this blue outlines represent the maps that we've created showing those individual areas. So we can go on to the next slide. Chandler Road quarry, like I said, my understanding is that's a pre-existing quarry that has been there for many, many years, and has a couple of buildings there. They extract the stone, and then they use mechanical guillotines to break that stone down after it's been blasted out of the quarry hole. And then they bring that inside to the building, and they do some additional cutting and processing where they palletize and stack that material for sale. So the product that comes out of the quarry is really like a 4x4 pallet stacked about 3 feet high with stone, typically wrapped in like some chicken wire, and then those are put on a tractor trailer truck and hauled to their ultimate destination for sale. And what they do, bringing those different materials together, are because there's different colors of the stone. So the reason we have all these quarries is the material, the stone is different color in all those different locations. So they blend those colors together, and that's like we saw on that first slide, or on the cover slide, where you get that nice mixture, texture of different colors. So they just give some parameters here. It's an 8.7 acre lot. It's located in the residential 3 district. And like I said, all the evidence that I've seen in prior permitting history indicated that that was a pre-existing operation, existed prior to zoning. There was issued some different permits over the years for the different buildings that are on the site. Moving on, the next slide gives these bullets. The whole intent here is to reduce the activities at that location, move those operations over the next more than 18 months. Reduce noise with mitigation, so we're working with RSG on different ways that they can attenuate noise better. We understand that noise is a significant concern. I'm not the noise expert. We will have a noise expert at the next hearing for everyone. Resource Systems Group is part of the project team here, and Eddie Duncan is not able to be here tonight, but he will be here at the next hearing, and that's where we will address specifics about his testimony, his report, as well as being able to have him questioned by any of the attorneys. But part of the application was a comprehensive noise study. And then another goal of moving operations from Chandler to South Quarry is to reduce the truck traffic. As I mentioned, we have to bring material into that site and then truck it out when it's complete for processing and for sale rather. So by moving operations and again just simply exporting material out from the Chandler Road site will significantly reduce the number of trucks in and out of that site. And we've done a traffic study to demonstrate what that looks like. And then again, we're going to be, and some of these things we've actually been working with Allstone for quite some time, trying to get better stormwater management in place. So there have been some new stormwater measures installed at the Chandler Road facility to try to treat the stormwater better and comply with the various regulations. I can go through that in more detail later on or answer questions about that. And then we did a wetland delineation for that site and identified one area where some of their stored materials were getting a little too close to the wetland buffer. We went out there and made sure that that was demarcated properly and that they were backing away from those jurisdictional buffers. We had the state come out and confirm that that was acceptable. Next page is Exhibit W. That's a site plan of the Chandler Road facility. And then there's an inset map there on the right, which is a little bit of a detail that shows the new stormwater that we've installed, or portions of it that are in the works. I can describe that in a little more detail. Essentially what it is the quarry, which would be to the I guess north is up on this map, so to the east or the right-hand side of this map. We've lowered that such that it acts like a settling pond. So the water from the site drains to the quarry hole and it settles out fines. And then operationally, when they need to quarry more, they can dewater that into sediment bags. These large 15 by 15 sediment sock, basically. The water goes into those bags and the water is filtered through the bag, discharges into a swale. That swale has stone check dams, some sand. We're filtering that water further before ultimately it's discharged into the brook. And then on this map, you'll also notice a heavy black dashed line. That is a containment berm that has not been constructed yet. There's a berm there that's like a safety berm to keep the trucks and people out of the brook, but we've recommended a containment system that will allow for no water sheet flowing off of the site into the wetland or the brook. And it'll all go directed into the quarry first, be treated, and then discharged when it's clean. And we've applied for a permit from the state to be able to operate that as well. And that permit is pending. And there's a picture of that containment berm that hasn't been constructed in the lower left corner of that Exhibit W. And then on the next page, you'll see some pictures. This is that sediment bag that I was describing. So that was something that was implemented earlier this year. When I've been hired for not quite a year. We've been working with them to try to work with the existing constraints and come up with solutions that will improve the water quality from the site. We knew that that was a concern. And this is a picture of that bag when it's inflated, meaning it's pressurized from a pump coming water from the quarry, which is in the picture to the left in the background. And then the green swale there with the rock in the middle is the discharge swale where that water from the bag flows into that swale. And then we've tested the water at the end of that swale before it goes into the brook, and it's in the compliance. Under the state rules for a quarry like this, you need to have less than 100 milligrams per liter of sediment in the water. When we first started out, without these treatment practices, we were getting some higher readings, and now we've got that down to where the discharge from the swale is in that compliance range, less than 100 milligrams. Once that permit is issued by the state, it requires visual inspection and monthly observations to make sure that that continues to work, and then there are provisions to be able to continually refine it if there's any problems. The next step will be to finalize the containment berm. And then that's that area I mentioned where there was some equipment in this area when we got on site, and once we finished our wetland delineation, made sure that area got restored back to grass. Blocked it off with those boulders. So that's it for Chandler. Next slide, please. So now I can talk a little bit about the North Quarry. My understanding is that this is also a pre-Act 250 originally and predates zoning. This is the quarry I mentioned at the northernmost part of the 103 site. It's visible from the highway near the bridge, particularly when you're coming from the north and you're traveling south. It's on your right-hand side right before you cross the river. That site, again, was subject to an Act 250 permit that was issued way back, I believe, in the late 80s. And then there was an amendment in the 2003 period, I believe. I have my dates wrong on that one. But one typo that I would like to fix on GG is the parcel size. We did a boundary line survey of the larger parcel, and it is 300 acres, not 343 acres. The tax map shows it at 343 acres. That's in the Conservation Residential District, and quarrying in that district is a conditional use. That North Quarry is about an acre. Again, same thing, it's a dimensional stone quarry. That material is trucked currently to the Chandler site if it's not palletized right at the North Quarry. And they're in the process of, what we're proposing is a conversion of that site into a contractor yard, which is it's a conditional use as well in that district. And the idea being that would give them a place to store finished materials and any equipment. From what I've learned about this operation, there's some large equipment that they need. There's plenty of heavy equipment, and they need a place to store that. And despite having 300 plus acres, there's not a lot of usable space right now. Most of that's forested. So what we're proposing is to grade that site in such a way that it can be used, and it also provides for a better access. Currently, there's a pretty difficult access off of 103 in that location, and what we've determined is, based on the highway grades, if we lower the grade of the site, we can actually accommodate tractor trailers, and that will help with storing materials on that site. It has good sight distance in both directions. It's just that the grade is so high that it needs to be lowered and flattened out. Picture of the North Quarry is the next slide, just from a Google Street View. Most people in the area would be familiar with that, and that's that steep grade, and the current guardrail shows where we're proposing to build a new access point. So should we get approval from this board, we'll be seeking a highway access permit from AOT. We've met with them and determined that they don't have a problem with making this a safer access, and they actually like this location for a future staging area because the bridge is planning to be it's definitely going to be rebuilt. The final design of that hasn't been finalized, but this site would make a great access, or a great staging area for that, and then a great access for whatever they decide to do with the remainder of the parcel. There's a brook that kind of bisects the 300 acres, and this is the only access to get to the probably 100 acres of land for logging or any future activities. So we felt like a contractor yard was a good solution, and improving the access would make it safer. And the quarry itself will be reclaimed and finalized, and that is part of the application that we're doing here as well. So I've just got some bullet points there, new reclamation plan. Certainly once that contractor yard is completed, the noise will be considerably less than a quarrying operation for any residents in that area. Again, asking for 12 to 18 months to complete that transition to the new south operation, as well as get this one. There's quite a bit of site work that has to be done to flatten that grade to get it to be sufficient for tractor trailers. Improved access, again, I mentioned just for the future replacement of the William Bridge is a benefit. And then the next exhibit is V as in Victor. Next slide. That just shows a graphic plan depiction of what we're proposing. The size of that quarry is not really, the contractor yard is about the same size as the quarry, so we're not expanding that significantly. It's just leveling it out so that it can be used, and also putting in new stormwater treatment facilities there to treat that impervious surface. And that shows the new access there a little closer to the bridge, but creates a better turning radius for tractor trailers. And then on the next slide, you got exhibit Z, as in zebra. We've got some cross sections that show in both directions what a section through that new facility would look like. You can see that we're lowering the grade there, leveling it out to the same elevation as the bridge, roughly. And then on to the south quarry. Next slide, please. This is the one site that already has an existing local permit. And again, typo there, it should be 300 acres, not 343. And that's in the same conservation residential district. The existing quarry was approximately 13 acres on the Act 250 permit. About 2.5 acres of that exists. So that site, although it was permitted all those years ago, almost 20 years ago this week, really hasn't been significantly developed the way it was originally intended. When I went back and looked at all those approvals, they were talking about extracting about 60,000 cubic yards a year out of that quarry, and I would have to guess that they haven't done any of that yet. The extraction that's occurred to date has been very, very minimal. So while it has been opened up, cleared to some extent, there's still much more of the site that was originally permitted that hasn't been built. And what we looked at was the opportunity to use some of that to construct this stone operation within an existing building. That's those pictures of a large 20,000 square foot warehouse where a lot of the noise can be attenuated in that, as well as aesthetically more pleasing. It'll be lower, so it's not currently visible from any public way, but we wanted to ensure that even the top of the roof wouldn't be visible. So by lowering the grade to what was originally going to be the floor of the quarry, that's essentially going to be below the roof of the quarry, of the building. So you won't be able to see that from anywhere unless you're at a very, very high elevation. That has another benefit in that there's three-phase power available. So instead of having to run generators to run their operations, they'll be able to extend three-phase power to that site. And they've been in talks with Green Mountain Power about getting that done, and that better for the environment. There's less air pollution and certainly less noise with three-phase versus gen sets. There won't be any changes out on the actual road. The little building there, as you see it here, is not changing at all. So that operation isn't going to change. And that quarry would be up in the woods behind this view. So again, we've got, I think originally we were talking 24,000, now we've scaled it back to 20,000. Single-story metal roof, lower the elevation by 30 feet. And again, this allows us to consolidate operations, improve stormwater management there as well, three-phase power, as I mentioned. We're also going to be constructing new septic and water supplies on the other side of the river, completed all within 18 months from approvals, and we've made some provisions for future expansion should that operation need to grow. Exhibit U is the detailed site plan. And then Exhibit Y is the cross-section from showing the little stone house down by Route 103 all the way to the top of the quarry. And so in perspective there in cross-section, I've got 1, 2, 3 levels basically shown, and you can imagine that those top 2 levels were the original approval, and all we're asking for is to go lower. So we're not expanding the horizontal footprint of the quarry. We're lowering the quarry and then the building shown in the bottom of the quarry. So architectural Exhibit F, and I think the next, there was 3 different images of this building that were provided as just samples of the type of building they're looking to construct in that location. So, as I mentioned, project timeline, we're hoping to have all of our hearings and approvals by January of 2024, and then move right into this phasing plan of constructing the new South Quarry facility, begin moving out of the Chandler Quarry, and finalize the completion of the contractor yard at the North Quarry. Hoping to have that all done by September 2025. And then I went through the zoning, so the next slide is the dimensional requirements. And we tried to just make sure for the record that we had covered all our bases. So the rest of the slideshow here is essentially taking provisions from the zoning and then comparing our project to it to make sure that, that we didn't miss anything. So, for example, for the North Contractor Yard, we looked at things like lot coverage, frontage, building height, and whether or not the use was allowed. So in all of those instances, we felt that that one could be permitted if it was deemed acceptable to the board. Next one was the South facility. Same thing. We went through and just kind of looked through the zoning to make sure that the provisions within the zoning complied, or we complied with the provisions of the zoning. And in fact, it does meet all of those requirements that I depicted on this slide. And then for Chandler, we did the same thing. Although understanding for this one, it's a little bit different where we are asking for that continued temporary operation, but understanding that we want to put a clock on it, finish it, and that it would revert back to essentially a stone extraction operation only. So really minimizing the activities that occur there, all the stone cutting, all of the, reducing the size of the, other than the blasting and potentially a little bit of resizing for transport. The bulk of the operations would be moved to the new facility. I went through the conditional use standard as well, just to make sure that we didn't miss anything. Section 4.8.c.1 is your general standard section. And again, the next few slides just go through how I believe they've all been met or in some cases are not applicable. I think we can keep going through the slide deck. And I've outlined in some instances here, or in each instance, how and why I feel those standards are met. So certainly everyone should take an opportunity to review that, and then I can come back to the next hearing and we can answer any specific questions, or if you want, we can dive into those whenever. But I felt like we certainly met many of these, or all of these, or they weren't applicable. So we can move forward to the next slide. Again, walking through, either they were not applicable or we could meet them. And I try to specify which I thought pertained to each site on this little chart here. And moving along. So again, just instead of sitting here and talking through all the testimony, I think it'll be more efficient if we just kind of put these into the record and let everybody read them later on, and then we can dial into those questions that folks may have about how we specifically meet any one or all of these.
Could I just ask a question about 4.9? I could not find 4.9 anywhere in this development review procedures, and it's been referred to, 4.9. What is that?
I think 4.9 are the performance standards, unless I missed something. So under the conditional use requirements, section 4.9 are performance standards. And again, I cut the same format here. I copied out portions of the zoning that I thought were applicable that needed to be discussed. There are 6 different criteria that have to be met in those performance standards. I went through and just articulated whether I thought they were not applicable or we could meet them. And then on the next pages, I outlined how we're meeting them if they're applicable. So for example, on noise, we've done a noise study. On traffic, we've done a traffic study. So I won't belabor everybody by reading all of this, but that's the gist of how we did this. On air pollution, we went through and I made notes too as to why I feel like these are met. So again, I'm happy to slow down, I'm happy to go faster if I'm eating up too much of the board's precious time. Things like glare, light, or reflection, really not particularly applicable. The site doesn't have any exterior lighting whatsoever. It does have safety hazards. It is a quarry, so they use explosives, and a outside blasting contractor is hired when those blasts are done, and they do that in accordance with all of the requirements. Typically, that type of activity is governed by an organization called MSHA, and they do regular spot inspections of these quarries to determine whether or not they're operating safely and whether or not the storage of fuels, the storage of, they don't store any explosives on site. Those are brought in only when they do the blasting. Again, not applicable electromagnetic, and then underground storage. There are no underground storage tanks, but there are some above ground storage tanks that are used for things like fueling vehicles, and those are double walled type tanks that are above grade. And then we've got the final portion of the presentation are the extraction standards, and this would typically, in my opinion, apply, section 3.9 here, really applies to the South Quarry only, since the Chandler and the North Quarries both at the, from what I've read from the town's previous decisions, both of those were exempt from their extraction activities, predated the local zoning. So as I looked at it, the only thing that needed to be complied with for section 3.9 was the South Quarry changes, since the town did issue a permit for that site. For example, going lower, we would need to make sure that we weren't in conflict with any of the extraction standards. So again, that's how I went through this and analyzed what the project versus section 3.9 only for the South Quarry. And you can go through and read. My notes are all in red on, I guess it's on black on that one, but on my page it was, I guess they're kind of red on there. So the black is the standard right out of the zoning. The red is my commentary on each line item. And I can read all those in, but I don't think I want to take the board's time for that. And like I said, I think we can comply with the requirements for section 3.9 for the South Quarry changes, and I think that the North Quarry and the Chandler Quarry, from an extraction perspective, are in compliance since it's not applicable. And finally, in summary, we're trying to continue the operations here in Chester and produce this stone in a way that allows the operations to continue and make it better from an impact to neighbors' perspective by making these changes happen. That is the end of my PowerPoint.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Bob, I have a bunch of questions.
Some of the things you were saying.
Yeah, my name's Chris Marks. I've owned property on Deanbrook Road since 1994-5, and I bought the property off of the guy who owned the quarry there. And back then, it was a one-man with an excavator, one shed, and no electricity. Now it's blown up. There's 20 guys running around there. I don't know how many pieces of equipment they got. And every time they do something, I mean, you can't trust these guys. They lie about everything they do. They built that equipment storage shed and put them saws in there. They're pumping silt into the waters. They've been getting away with it for 10 years. And just now, they're getting called out on it. I mean, I see their track history in Connecticut and what they've done up here. And it's just one lie after another. I mean, I'm just opposing any permits you might consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
During the presentation, I did not see a lot of reference made to the Roaring Brook, which is between the north and your south quarry.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Say your name, just say your name and
Mike
record, please.
LeClaire. And I'm wondering if you're going to establish a road to bring your finished product over to the other north quarry from the south quarry, what type of permits are you going to need to go over that stream? Are you going to go over it, under it, through it, or build a bridge? I hope you do a lot more than what's been done on Chandler Road. Chandler Road, since our last meeting, we photographed that stream running gray-white. Pure, crystal clear until you get to the quarry site, gray-white, at least on 2 occasions, and I don't go over there every day. They talk about what their plan for the future is. I'm more worried about what they haven't done at this point for the last 4 years in order to make it believable that they're going to be any better in the next 4 years. 12 to 18 more months of polluting Deanbrook in the transition period, unacceptable. And water resources, fish and wildlife, and people like us need to pay attention to that. And we have not done a very good job for the last at least 3 or 4 years. And I'll let somebody else speak, and I may come back again in a minute.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I assume council will reserve our time until next. Absolutely. Is that
Thank you.
understood? Yeah, thanks.
Review
I have some questions.
Yes, Phil.
Is there, at the Chandler Road site, is there one brook or 2 brooks?
The question was Chandler Road, Brooks?
Yes. Are there 1 or 2?
I think it's called the Great Brook that flows along that one.
There seems to be a small brook that runs right along Chandler Brook Road.
Deanbrook Road.
Deanbrook Road,
Correct.
yeah.
Excuse me, that is not what I'm talking about, Roaring
Please,
Brook.
sir,
Please.
you've had your chance.
You can only speak one at a time.
Please. Thank you.
I just want to make it clear that you didn't misunderstand me.
So which brook are we talking about?
To answer your question, the Great Brook is, I understand, the name of the brook that flows parallel to Deanbrook Road, which is the one that he was just referring to. There's a small little drainage right when you enter off of, when you're on the access road into the facility, there's a little brook that crosses the facility road, but that's a very small, very small trickle. The large brook is the one that parallels Deanbrook Road, and this site does discharge into that.
When you do the runoff inspections, you were talking about the runoff inspections, this bag that you filter through.
and then that dumps into the brook, and you inspect that?
Correct, so...
Okay. Do you keep a written log of the inspections?
Up until this point, we have not, because that is a requirement of the permit that we're seeking from the state of Vermont. And then there would be annual inspection requirements for the permit for the state. Up until this point, it's been corrective action to try to get the facility working.
Do I take it that you're going to discontinue extraction at the North Quarry?
They are asking for a permit to construct a contractor yard, which would essentially require the lowering of that site to the same elevation as the bridge. And what we would propose is that would be in conjunction with the reclamation activity to complete all extraction.
Okay, but after your 18 months...
No more extraction after that.
Okay.
There is a provision that we made in the application for a future, and there was some reference to a couple of those things made by some of the concerned citizens. So the road that we proposed is not part of this application. What we wanted to do was identify any future activities that we could think of that might be part of the reasoning behind some of these things. And one of those was that we would build in the future, if allowed and given all permits, a road between the north contractor yard and the south, and that access for the north yard could also become the access for some future activity on that portion of the site.
When you use the phrase contractor yard, the contractor that you're talking about is the applicant?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you're going to be leveling the property on both the north and the south quarries. On the south quarry, so you can reduce the elevation of the building, and on the north quarry, so you can create the contractor yard.
That is correct.
Is that going to require an acceleration of extracting activities?
There is site work involved with both of those, correct. Okay. So there would be quite a bit of...
So to accomplish that, there would be more blasting than we're experiencing now.
Not necessarily more blasting. It might be the type of thing where in their allowed number of blasts, one of those might be a larger blast in order to get that material. Okay. But you're right in that material there may be more activity, much like any other construction of a large project, where you have a short period of higher trucking to move that material, and then after that it subsides.
Okay. The warehouse, are those walls going to be insulated?
I would assume so, at least with some sort of sound mitigation. And the property is allowed to operate all year round.
Could you go back to your map and point out where on the south quarry, where the current extraction activity is taking place and where future extraction activities would take place?
Yes. So this map right here is C2-101, and unfortunately I don't have an exhibit number on this one.
Sure.
And I've got a short cable problem. I can't point to the map because I can't reach it without extending the cable here. But on this...
And it might help, actually, is there an exhibit number on it so that maybe people can...
Why don't you move that a little closer?
There we go. Somebody give me the exhibit number for sheet C2-101. C2-101. This is Exhibit U. Is this mic on? Yeah, this mic's on. So Exhibit U, and the gentleman at the end, I'm sorry, I can't read his name, asked about the extraction activity that's currently, so on Exhibit U, the original proposed clearing limits that were approved by the Planning Commission and back in 2003 are depicted on this, as well as the Act 250 permit, shows about 11 acres of future extraction. The light area right here and here is the couple of acres that they've already opened up. And those areas have some rock extraction occurring in this area and a little bit of rock extraction occurring in this area, but most of it has just been moving the overburden, the dirt above the rock, out of the way. So in the 20 years since this permit was issued, as I stated earlier, very little rock has actually been pulled out of this site.
My last point, again, when this is all done, there would be more extraction, I assume there would be more extraction at the South Quarry than there is now. Because you're going to have to pick up whatever extraction has been taking place at the North Quarry.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Although we're not asking for more tonnage per year or anything like that than what was already approved.
I have a question for you. The shed that was put on the Chandler Quarry was permitted as a storage facility, and then that saw was put in. Am I correct?
Yes, and there are saws in that building.
But those were never operating on the Chandler Quarry until that point. Is that correct?
I don't know what was operating there or not. I've only been there since it's...
I'm only asking because I'd like to have a better understanding of what the proposed 18 months is going to be like.
Understand.
If that saw wasn't there, and if that building was permitted for storage and recently started having a saw in it, I would like to know if that's going to continue for that 18-month proposal or not, since it's actually not a permitted use that was issued.
That is what we are asking this board to allow. And I'm not, to caveat that, I'm not aware of what happened before I started this project a year ago, and I
hadn't heard it brought up that clearly before, and I thought I'd like to clarify.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Did you have a microphone?
Mike. Is this working? Is this working? Okay. Well, I'd like to help edify you about what's happened at that shed.
State your name, sir.
My name is Mike Kenworthy,
Thank you.
and I'd like to tell you what's happened at this shed. I own all the property on the north side of that quarry, 1,500 feet. And our family's had that property for 50 years. And I've seen that quarry, visited every year for the last 40 years, seen what's happened. That building is the biggest building, that storage building is the biggest building on that property. I looked for my property a couple weeks ago, has 6 doggy door sized things coming out the back. I assume there's 6 sawing lines. 6 sawing lines. There's no permit for that. And I can't imagine, the board's job is to balance business interests with the community's interests, the people. And the board has to look into the eyes of all the petitioners, and they have to determine who are the good people and who are the bad people. And all I ask of the board is treat the bad people, don't give them permits for things they didn't previously get permits for, including the sawing. I'll give you an example of my experience of this lovely neighbor. In 2015, I walked outside. All of a sudden, the noise is huge, it's loud. It's louder than it's ever been before. I walk down that 1,500 feet through the woods, go down the quarry, take a look. 300 feet of stone wall forming our common border was blown away. This is a professional mind. They hire professional people like you. When they bought the property a couple of years ago, I assume they did a survey and they knew the border line. How could they possibly not know the borderline? The guy who owned the quarry before was quite a character around town, and I heard a lot of stories about him. He's a bad actor. You take the cake, though. My God. Not only did you rip up 300 feet of wall, but you pushed my dirt, a whole acre worth of dirt, pushed it back, made a big berm, over 10 feet tall, 40 foot wide, 300 feet long. I got them, they were dressing up this big promontory, this big protrusion coming out. It was mostly on my property, beautiful stone. I got my property map, showed the site manager, and he agreed, he called. And what's his face?
You need to speak.
So Julian came up, and they basically, I found out they took 20 truckloads of rock off my property, and they were cleaning up this new piece to blast. The site manager said, that's beautiful rock. It's pinkish color, they love pink. It's the pie crust type, 2-4 inches, that they easily crumbles up. Perfect. I'm making a settlement with him, and he said, and basically a settlement is, he can't take any more of my rock, he can't trespass on my property, and he's got to build. He took down 30 trees up to 75 foot tall. There was a big sound barrier. That's why I could hear it now. Okay? So he promised to plant trees there too. Nothing. He didn't do that. He didn't plant the trees. He took down another 30 feet of stone wall so he could have access. He carved 50 feet down exactly on the property line, a 50-foot drop. There's no fence, there's no nothing, and then he drives his trucks around on my property to get from one end to the other end because there's no room because he's taken the rock all the way. So he's still going on my property with his trucks. My advice to the board, do not give these people an inch. They've proven they're bad actors. They put that saw in there. They knew what they were doing. Come on. All I ask of the board is whatever they have permits for, they can do. But not what they don't have a permit for, they shouldn't do, including that frickin' saw. There's no reason for that saw to be running. None. You don't have permission. The rock hammers too. That just started a couple of years ago. I never heard that noise. Have you? You're not a noise guy. Sorry. But I'm sorry for the board members, to you. Don't give them anything other than they have hard permits for, please. That's all I ask.
Thank you.
Everybody in the room needs to understand also what the DRB can and can't do. We don't interpret the difference between right and wrong about people's opinions and things. We go by the bylaws. We have to enforce the bylaws. So everything you're saying is important, but it's important for everybody here to know the DRB just can't change how we feel. We have to go by the town bylaws. So it's not interpretive. All I'm saying is you need to understand that. So we can work with everybody that way.
Thank you. I'd like to take a 5-minute break if everybody can handle a 5-minute break, just to stretch our legs and take a breath.
Go to the bathroom.
Is that okay? We'll resume at 7:30.
Hi, John. Hey, Jim. How you doing? Good. How are you? Good.
Actually pathetic like this. This has been allowed to go on that long, and it might still go on further.
Randy lived across from the North Park.
We couldn't take it anymore. It's relentless. Oh, we haven't been able to sell the house yet. You can't sell a house to sell it. If you got that, all day. 10 hours of that a day. Just keep on going. We lived across the road from the North Pole.
Look at this. Here's a face out of the past, man. How you? I'm doing all right. How are you? It's good to see you.
I might not have Rennie's, but I have,
Figured as much.
and I have
And the state has these, recordings as well. I don't know how to pay attention.
What's your phone? What's your phone?
Do we start to move back?
Okay.
Move back, you move back to the back of the room.
3-2.
I'll send you me, and then you just bring that up.
Hey.
I'm trying to have John.
I guess
Yeah. You should be the treasurer,
He's one of the
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Michaela has that because she set up a system on the computer where as long as I got this onto my computer, then
Can we get started again, please?
Right.
so she has.
Okay.
That's what they want. For conditional use, continue the violation of the grant. Wait a minute.
Thank you. Looks like we lost some souls, but that's fine. Any further comments, questions regarding the PowerPoint? Okay. Would you grab the microphone and identify yourself, sir?
Sure.
Yep.
My name's Rennie Melanson. I live across from the North Quarry.
Thank you.
And my wife and I had to move. We had to move because we couldn't take it anymore. At 10 hours of constant pounding, which was not addressed by the noise study, because RSG didn't do a noise study while that excavator was pounding up there. So the same noise that we had to live with or try to live with for years wasn't addressed in that noise study. And then from our property, we looked down on that North Quarry. We could see the sediment going into the river every time it would rain. And you didn't speak of the mine water controls for the North Quarry. That's because there aren't any. There are no sediment traps. There's nothing to catch it at all. And then you brought up the safety issues that they have. They've had, since Mr. Julian addressed the select board here in March, you've had 12 more citations from MSHA, and 3 of them were SNS. That's the most serious MSHA violations they have. And that was after the appearance here at the select board meeting. $2,682 in fines from MSHA. So much for safety. The North Quarry If you're going to lower that level, that's solid rock, you're going to lower it down 50 feet, that gives you another few years of extracting the same rock, which you should have stopped extracting in 2013, when the Act 250 permit expired. I can wait for you to answer these.
If you'd like to respond to, I mean, I know you weren't involved in the project when that person.
I don't have any comment on his comments.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Yes, sir.
My name's John Novak. I live across from the Chandler Quarry. My property parallels Deanbrook Road, and I'm pretty close to them. And I like to keep an eye on the brook, and I'm noticing that on this presentation that you've implemented drain on Chandler Road, and I don't know what color the water is supposed to be after you purify it, but it's coming out white right now, or at least it was at 5:30 this afternoon. I mean, the whole brook is white, and that's something that I witness a lot of there, and I think it's just way too much. I don't know if any of you were around here in the 1960s, but I grew up in Proctorsville. And you get up in the morning, you never knew what color the Black River was going to be, because the woolen mill dumped their dye in the Black River. And I believe it was in the early 70s, they cleaned that up. And they still have a problem with the trout in that brook spawning, or in that river, spawning because of that, 50 years later. So, you know, we can't taint our brooks. Our brooks are beautiful, they're clear. And I've been out west driving truck. Everything looks like the Black River did when Irene hit. The Northeast is the most beautiful place in this whole country. And then somebody allowed people like this to come in to our state and crap it up. I mean, I hate to see it. It sickens me, really. Because I really think about moving maybe towards northern Maine where things aren't touched yet. So this board, I'm telling you, even after this presentation, they say they're going to do everything. I assure you, they don't care. They don't care about our water. They don't care about our air. They don't care about anything. Because if they did, they would have fixed these problems 3-4 years ago when people started complaining. They don't care. They just don't care. And they're already in trouble with the same thing somewhere else. Now they come up here and do the same thing. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
If it's okay, I can't respond to all of that, but I can certainly respond to the part that involves me. So I'm an engineer. I've been doing this for 20 plus years here in Vermont. I've represented a lot of different clients over the years, and my goal when I get involved in a project is to address concerns, whether brought by a neighbor or ones I see with my own eyes. And I saw discharges at the Chandler site, just like that gentleman described. And so I can't speak to what my clients do, but I can tell you my job is to make it better. And so since I've been involved in this project, that quarry no longer is discharging water because we pump it out of the quarry and we discharge it through the bag that I was describing. The discharges that you're seeing currently have to do with the stone in the stockyard area, and our plans call for what's called a containment berm, and I pointed it out in the slideshow. That containment berm cannot be constructed until the Agency of Natural Resources approves it. That permit was filed in March, and I'm still waiting for that permit to be issued so that I can go and give these guys the green light to build that containment berm and keep any water leaving that site into the quarry and not into the brook.
Thank you. Question in the back, sir? You need the microphone. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Steve Green. I live on, have a house on Route 10 across from the quarry. And I've been involved in construction for quite a while and doing permitting. And, I know all of the board here is volunteers, and, you are doing an incredible job and service for our community. And it's important. You have incredible power. And one thing I don't understand is when you're in violation of an existing permit or you don't have a permit, how you would entertain a new permit. And even when you get something as simple as a building permit or a zoning permit of any kind, when you take that permit out, you agree not to start construction on that, on that project until after you receive your permit. So why would this board even entertain a new permit until they get the permit that seem to either have expired or they're not complying with all in line? Thank you.
Yeah, Barry Goodrich. Question for you. Have you tested any of that material that's coming into our waterways for PCBs or anything like that?
We have done suspended solids testing.
No, I'm talking about PCBs or any of that.
We have not tested anything for PCBs.
Well, who's going to do that? The state? Well, I didn't get an answer out of it.
I am not going to test for PCBs. That's all I can tell you. I don't know where PCBs would come from.
Excuse me, there's a question on Zoom, Evan Parks, and this may be pretty much the same question that was just asked. He said he would be curious to know if there will be any soil and water testing at all 3 sites, and who would be responsible for that testing.
I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat that?
Yes. Evan Parks asks, he has no audio, so he's asked me to read this. I would be curious to know if there will be any soil and water testing at all 3 sites, and who would be responsible for that testing.
I can answer with relation to the permit that I was just talking about. So the state has, for industrial sites, what's called a multi-sector general permit, and that permit does have some water sampling and testing associated with it for different activities. So for a quarry, the only requirements are of this nature are total suspended solids and pH. So when granted that permit, the applicant would be required under that permit to submit testing results for any discharges with total suspended solids and pH, and that those are the only requirements for testing that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Do you know who that was who was asking the question?
I don't.
Could you just,
Evan Parks.
oh, it's Evan Parks. Okay, thank you.
Further questions, comments? Anybody? Now's your time. Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Mike Leclerc, I just want to make sure that the board understands where I'm talking about when I say Roaring Brook. It has nothing to do with Dean Brook or Chandler Road. It is located between the North Quarry and the South Quarry. A beautiful little waterfall many times throughout the year, Roaring Brook. And I've seen trout in that stream, actually, because I used to care for a spring on that mountainside. And if they're planning to build a road between the North and the South Quarry, they've got to cross that stream. And I'm just curious how they're going to do that and actually do a better job than what's been done in the area of the Dean Brook.
I'll respond to that one, thank you. So what the gentleman is referring to is on C2-201, our North Quarry site plan, and you'll see a heavy dashed line. And again, I apologize, I don't know what exhibit, those have the exhibit numbers on them? Exhibit V is in Victor. Thank you. So there is a brook, a tributary of the Williams River, that flows in a easterly direction down the valley between those two hills. And I haven't heard it referred to as Roaring Brook, so thank you for clarifying that. We'll add that to our plan. I'm familiar with that area. I know what he's talking about, and all we did was depict a future potential access between the North and the South Quarry, which would have to cross that brook. This project is not, the application before you right now is not talking about that. We simply added that for the discussion purposes and to make sure there were no surprises in the future should we decide to come back with an application for that. But currently that is not part of any application.
Priscilla Melanson. Forgive me if this question has been asked. I had to move the car out from in front of a fire hydrant. So, my question is, how much of that area is going to be deforested? Are we going to see another big scar on the landscape with gas that's turned into an entire industrial facility?
Again, the plans that we have on the site plans that we're proposing today, there is reference, again, to potential. This shaded area, was labeled as potential future extraction areas. But currently, what's before the board does not involve any new clearing, with the exception of areas that are already approved to be cleared within the South Quarry. So I think it's probably on the order of 6 or 7 acres that's still approved for them to clear to make that quarry, as it was originally approved by the town in Act 250. But at the North Quarry and at Chandler Road, there are no new trees proposed to be cleared. And so I can't speak to any other future applications as to what we would do, but currently before this board, there's no significant new tree clearing.
Won't that affect sound attenuation without that buffer zone of trees? Or are you planning on going like behind them and keeping a buffer zone there? I'm telling you, the noise has been ridiculous where we live. They've started extracting up to a level that comes straight across to our land. For 2 years, I have sat in my yard and listened to that rock hammer. For 2 years, we've talked to them about it. All of us have talked to the state, we've talked to Chester about it, and it just keeps going. And as John said earlier, they just don't care about their neighbors.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm the right expert to talk about noise. As we said, we'll have a noise consultant here who can better answer your questions about what the plans depict. I can tell you that our intent is to make it better. We know that noise is a concern. That's why we're proposing to lower the quarry deeper into the ground so that there will be more earthen berm and more ability for sound to be attenuated from the operation.
Mike Kenworthy, someone mentioned that if you do lower the floor on that by 30 feet, that you'll increase your ability to extract beyond what the prior permit allowed. Is that true? If you lower the floor of that building, will it change anything about the permit in terms of what rock you can extract?
I think the answer is yes. I mean, it would make sense that if you have a quarry, and we have the cross sections that we looked at, the South Quarry limits aren't being changed, but if we go deeper and there happens to be rock in those areas, then that rock would be extracted. If it's soil, then they need to deal with the soil and move that.
So you're saying that for all your footprint currently of the quarry, you'll be able to go 30 feet deeper now?
That's what we're proposing.
This is Jim.
Our only hope.
Thank you.
This is Jim Dumont speaking, just to let the board know that at the next hearing, I hope one or both of the Julians will be here so we can ask them some of the questions based on what we've heard today.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Any further comments, questions, notes, anything? All right. Nope, it's too early to take a break again.
Too hot.
So, we're going to go through our process, and I don't know if we have all the answers to this, but it's...
Does the board have any questions?
Does anybody on the board have any questions, comments? Harry? Scott? Gary? One question, and maybe the attorney can answer. Do the Julians process stone anyplace else other than these 3 sites in Chester?
I don't know what I know that only the ones that I've been involved with, I don't know.
Just a question.
I'm not aware of any others. In Vermont or in Chester?
In Chester.
I'm not aware of any others.
Or do they process stone elsewhere in Vermont?
Not to my knowledge.
All righty. We can start going through the process.
Excuse me, could he be asked to follow up and provide that information? Is that possible for all of Vermont? Whatever his facilities are in all of Vermont?
Could you repeat the question?
He said he does not know about anything outside of Chester that Julian Materials is involved in. I would ask the board to ask him to follow up and provide that information to us, whether there are any other facilities that he owns or is affiliated with in Vermont.
Well,
is that possible?
Your client, sir?
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
my client.
Your client, sir. They could answer that question, right?
I don't want to get beyond
Yeah,
these applications because
that's
I can already see this spiraling into different directions other than what's in front of the DRB with regard to an application.
This is consistent with your prior behavior.
If I could speak to the conditional use issue, and they've asked specifically for continuation of extraction and processing at the Chandler Road property. So it is part of this application that they want you to approve continuing processing at Chandler Road, transporting material from North Quarry and South Quarry to Chandler Road. That wasn't grandfathered in because it wasn't under the same ownership. Chandler Road was independently owned when it was grandfathered. So it's very much an issue of this hearing, is that what's grandfathered, and this has been an expansion, and they're asking for you to give them, in effect, a conditional use permit to expand, to approve what they've already done, which is expanded the use of Chandler Road to a processing plant for off-site materials. So we need facts from someone who's not an engineer expert. We need facts as to what the history has been and when they did these changes over time. We haven't heard it. We haven't heard it. And they're asking you to bless their violation of the grandfathering that they were allowed to do. So I think we need to get into that. We need somebody from Julian to testify as to that issue.
This will not be the only hearing regarding this permit. I think we have a hearing scheduled, well, we have a site visit, I know, for September 25th to get everybody to see what's there. And I know there's another hearing scheduled regarding the noise, Preston?
25th?
Yeah, that will be the next
The 25th then.
hearing.
And I was just making that point because I think I hear some rustling, people thinking that this is the end.
No,
and
no.
It's not the end.
There are people here that have some answers, but not all the answers.
Recording in progress.
Thank you.
So, Bob, I believe because October 9th is a holiday that we're planning that the hearing on the noise would be October 23.
Right. So, but can I ask, I mean, obviously, we've heard a lot of comments this evening, most of them about noise, people not doing what they're supposed to do, what they're permitted to do, which is not fine by any means. But we're here to listen today. We will go into a deliberative session and deliberate everything we've heard, everything that the engineers have provided to us, all the testimony that you have given, and we'll make a decision. And, you know, I can almost guarantee you that that decision will be happy for some people and not for other people. That's the way life works. If they follow the rules, they follow the rules. They don't, they don't. But we're going to do the best we can with the information that you've given us, the information the applicant has provided us, and we'll make a decision. And if I'm hearing that one of the major, I've heard two major concerns this evening. One is the condition of the water running through the properties, and number two, or 1A, is the noise that's generated from the facilities that's there.
Number three is the sawing operation that's not permitted.
Is that a noise issue, sir?
It's not permitted.
Well, nothing that they're doing at Chandler Road is permitted as an operation. They were given a permit for a storage shed.
Yeah, right.
And if they're doing sawing there, that's not permitted.
What does it take to shut it down if they're out of their permit? What does it, I mean, if any of us don't do something permitted, a policeman comes to our house and says, stop it. How come that doesn't happen here?
I can't speak to the enforcement of the non-compliance for the permit.
How do we get an answer for that? How do we get an answer?
Yeah.
They don't, you say we follow the rules, everybody, but you're not, nobody's policing the rules. You're not. You're not.
I'm sorry.
Step out for a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
My name's still John Novak. I was a logger for 20 years, and if I did a tenth to a stream that these people do in one day, I'd be paying fines for 20 years. This is why I don't understand why they're still allowed to operate. They don't have the permit, shut them down. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I've called the police and reported them. The police don't even show up. What gives? Is somebody, I really wonder if somebody's getting their palm greased here, because I'm so disgusted with it. I'm done.
Hi, I'm Leslie Thorson, and I think I'd like to have a voice for everyone's frustration here. In March, the jurisdictional opinion from Act 250 came out and said they needed permits for everything they're doing. And here we are sitting here, and it is now September. We're looking at October, and they're continuing to work. And it's just unfathomable, and we're all collectively extremely frustrated, and our lives have really been affected by the Julian Quarry. And that's what I'm going to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we continue regarding the permit?
Is there any, are you going to be presenting anything more, Mark?
Not tonight. We have noise for the 25th.
All right.
But I would note that Jeremy is going to be out of state on the 25th, so any questions? Jeremy will be out. Colin will be here, and he's done most of the work on the project, so got any engineering questions?
There's some rebuttal or questions or whatever that could be
I
asked.
think it would probably help to have somebody here.
Well, we'll have, Colin will be here, and Colin actually did a lot of the design, so.
Any reason he couldn't be on video? I mean, that goes around the world, so he can't be out of, maybe out of Chester, but he doesn't need to be out of.
I don't think Jeremy's needed if Colin's available.
Well, I mean, we could talk about whether a subpoena, is anybody interested in subpoenaing anybody?
Do you have a subpoena power under a DRB proceeding?
I think there is, I mean, there is in the rule.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
But, I mean, it ought to come from a party. It shouldn't come from the board.
We'll just have to try to move the hearing.
I will gladly
We're not going to move it beyond October 25th.
Okay, but we'll have to take it up with the powers that be.
The week prior? I mean, I'm available the week prior.
Well, I mean, if there's a scheduling issue we need to address, then, you know, maybe we need to address it. But the board has to have a quorum as well. Right now, a date has been found that works.
I mean, it seems to me, excuse me, just on a matter this important, to provide the board and the public with a 50-page report, 15 minutes before the hearing.
We need time to digest it,
Yeah, we
review
will
it.
need time to digest it. And then for the proponent of this report not to be available at the next hearing is making a mockery of the process. It's just giving them more time to keep on doing what they're doing.
That's not the intent here. I'm just saying that Colin Johnson, who's a licensed engineer, prepared most of this information. He's 100% qualified to testify to any questions regarding anything that's been submitted to the board relative to the design for this conditional use permit. The fact whether it has to be Jeremy Matoski or Colin doesn't matter. It's not relevant. As long as we can answer the questions that people have regarding the things that have been submitted. I'm just trying to protect Jeremy's trip and...
Jeremy gave us a lot of information this evening.
But a lot of it was prepared by Colin.
But we need time to digest it.
If the board, if I can be available online, that may solve our problem.
That might solve the problem. But I think it's a problem that needs to be solved, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Chiming in here, Bob. Probably by the filing of a request for a subpoena, to issue a subpoena. And then the DRB can get together and figure out whether it will issue that subpoena or not.
Okay, I will file a request for at least 2 subpoenas, and I'll get that to you within the week.
Yeah, I think that ought to happen, and then you'll have an opportunity to respond, and the board will...
That's fine.
...issue a ruling, and part of that might be whether or not the witness can appear remotely. So address that as well.
I agree with Steve, remote is fine. We all use remote.
Well, maybe
We
that
may
works.
be able to resolve it
So
all
maybe we
just
don't
by
need
the
it. Why
length
don't you
of time we
two
have between the
get
meetings.
together and talk that out? And if you need to file a motion, file a motion.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we can make, if we can work it out, it'd be great.
Did you get that, Bob?
I'll defer to Preston.
I'll say what I was going to say, and then maybe we'll find out whether it's what you want to hear. The DRB normally meets on the second and fourth Monday of the month. and that's making it kind of slow because the second Monday of October is a holiday. But the DRB can hold special, we can continue the special meetings on any night that we want.
Right.
If we don't want this to just drag out.
I prefer to wrap this up sooner rather than later.
If the board can find an earlier time that works with getting everybody here, that's great.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are an option, Wednesday generally isn't. The room's being used for other things. Would you say, Julie, that generally Tuesdays and Thursdays this room is open, or? No. Okay.
We'll cooperate in any way possible.
Absolutely.
And we'll.
And that was the first I'd heard of that date, so.
That makes at least two of us in the room. Any further questions, comments regarding the information that was provided here this evening?
Well, just, if you could give us one, Mark, you and I should talk about the noise study and see if we can reach agreement on that, if not.
Let's do that outside.
We can take a short break. We'll take, okay, it's 8:05. How about we're back here at 8:15?
Okay.
All right.
And why don't you talk about some dates too? I mean, maybe we can start while that's going on, figuring out if there's some other dates. How are you? Doing great. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, I was kind of thinking doing, I mean, part of this process is just flat ass venting. You know, so. Yep, yep. Good, not bad, not too bad. Yeah, everything's good. Busy, very short. Very short indeed. Yep. Do you guys want to try to find another date? Because we ought to announce it, you need to announce a date at the end if it's not going to be the October 25th. Yeah, sure.
Well, that was across the board. It made sense to the operations that
Well, the,
I mean, they may even sell Well, I mean, it's something we can talk about. You have to process.
I'm very interested in the sound.
I will ask them. So if I go around to the
And I thought we were going to discuss sound tonight. But it's fine. Well, you know, the neighbors are frustrated. And this is probably the first official action that's being taken. Last 5 years, 10 years. And they're venting. You know, we don't enforce. We apply the bylaws to the application.
That's yours is in South Korea. Chandler, we got
that's what we're trying to do. Well, I mean, historically, they process no. Now, we don't know exactly how many it is, but they mean how use the camera. They're plastic and so, but that'd be good example.
Yeah, realistically, if they stop using the hammer, pretty much done. Right. Yeah, calm down.
I'd really like to check it out.
It's, you can find it, it's custom guitars.
So here are some dates that they're talking about as alternatives that Preston have their rooms available for the 10th, the 12th, the 19th, and then it's 10/23 is the next date.
I would definitely sweep up. I think so. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, we got an update.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, that was kind of Jeremy doing that.
Based on my experience, looking at these permits, this is obviously pretty your shoes.
It's in Colin, though.
Look at all the permits.
No, because he's a young kid. He's a young kid. Yeah, Jeremy's a senior guy. I mean, Jeremy's going to try to be around. Sure, one of the other things I thought about is we have a celebration on the 25th of September, 25th. So maybe if you need to talk to Jeremy, he needs to be available for site presence.
I have a vacation all day.
I wasn't planning to come down either.
And there won't be a record at the site visit, right?
No, I was thinking they could come and reopen something.
Oh, I see.
The problem I have right now is that Eddie's out in the country or somewhere. I don't know, I have him, I know that, October 25th. I don't know where he's going to go. If we change the date, and I just don't want to change the date and realize that he can't. Lee. I got to sign it.
So, there are some other dates that the board could make. 11th, 12th, or 19th.
Of October?
Of October.
10, 11, 12.
Or 19th.
You're going to be even more than my son is. Half of my family is one son in Massachusetts and the other one in Burlington, Vermont. One of the dates they have,
He just said 10, 11, 12, 19.
10th, 11th, 12th, and 19th.
Glasses.
The 19th, I'm speaking at a conference in Burlington. I'm not sure what time it is. That's the hike. That's too much. But the 10th, 11th, 12th, I don't know anything on my schedule.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty okay.
You're good? You're good?
19th.
You're good?
I don't know, but I'm more concerned about Eddie being available.
Yeah, how about you for 10th, 11th, 12th?
All right. Thank you.
More concerned about Eddie being the sound guy.
Yeah.
We got him for 25th.
I'll let Jim finish.
We don't want to do this.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you hold the 25th and we're getting there on the 10th?
Yep, so
We'll hold the 25th, and, but we gotta announce something at the end of this meeting for a date. Certain.
10th, 11th, 12th, and
Yeah, so what we can do is just basically announce 2 days.
Yeah.
So if everybody's free on the 10th, we'll go 10th
25th?
and the 25th.
I think that's a go. We done the check right last
I think you go, both days are just, we'll end up with one.
I think
One of the, I mean, if everybody can be here on the 10th, we get done, we get done. If we don't, then we got the 25th.
I tried to still make sure.
Yeah.
It's not the 25th, it's the 23rd of October. No, the 25th is the second. September 25th. September 25.
But you might not have enough time to warn that for a hearing.
Easy.
What's that?
You don't have enough time to warn that for a hearing.
I'm well. How are you tonight?
Okay, I mean, we're going to announce it here.
The torches up there.
23rd is the hearing date. September 25th was the site visit. And we're talking about adding October 10th to make everybody be here.
I'm just waiting for Jim to wrap up.
10th is the preferred, I'm trying to get Eddie to.
Yeah, we're talking 10th. But we'll keep the 23rd.
Yeah, we'll keep the 23rd. Check with our organization. So Mark and I, you're going to operate the lot temporary, South Quarry, and maybe the North Quarry, while Mark is what this commission is. They're going to operate the hammer, and we'll agree on the dates for our experts.
So basically, we're gonna reschedule 2 hearing dates, October 10th, October 23rd. You guys work out the,
Well, the 10th doesn't work for me. The 11th does.
it's fine with me.
Me too. 10th, the whole week's good. That's what he's working on.
Yep. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And keeping October 23rd. Try to get this thing done.
Yep.
At the close of the hearing, we're gonna be basically saying a site visit on the 25th,
And a hearing?
A hearing on the October 10th at 6, and a hearing scheduled on the 23rd at 6.
Okay.
Hit that 11th, it's October 11th.
We're back. Are there any further questions, comments that we can address this evening? If not, I'd like to make, oh, excuse me.
Sure, this is Jim Dumont speaking. I just want to put into the record the agreement that Attorney Hall has entered into with us to prepare on the noise issues. We've asked that our noise expert be informed at least a week in advance of when they're going to operate the hydraulic hammer at the South Quarry and at the North Quarry, so that our expert can take noise measurements at various locations. And so we've reached an agreement on that.
That's
I just want to
fine.
let you
Thank
know. So hopefully we'll have our noise expert available at your next hearing, whenever it is, the 11th or the 23rd, and to report on what he's heard.
We have a site visit scheduled for the 25th of September, and we tentatively have hearings scheduled for October 11th.
October 11th at 6, and October 23rd at 6. And actually,
There were 2 dates. Oh, I missed one. There were
yeah.
two.
So
There were
2
3.
hearing dates.
Right.
Well, maybe I'll back up, like you're right, September 25th, and we're trying to set a time, Julie, for like 4:30 for a site visit. And the site visit
On September 25th.
on the 25th of September. Yeah, and where we're meeting is either going to be probably at the high school, depending upon whether or not there's another parking lot closer to the site that we can gather at, and that'll be put online, so that you'll see online where to go. And basically, everybody's going to be getting on a bus and being bused to the locations for the site visit because of limitations of space at the site visit. So, September 25th, 4:30 in the afternoon, with a location to get on the bus to be put on the town's website in the very near future. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be the high school, just to make it easy.
Yeah, I also want to address another issue about whenever we meet again, and that is, if I don't obtain an agreement to have a knowledgeable member of the Julian firm present to answer questions, I will ask for subpoena for him to be present.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so that gets to the next issue, which is October 11th. And we actually, at the close of this hearing, we need to actually set that hearing.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So it's being announced at this particular point in time that on October 11th at 6 o'clock, we'll be convening here for the next hearing on the permit application at 6 o'clock here at the town hall on October 11th, so that people can be here and be present to answer the kinds of questions that have been raised here tonight with all of the folks from the applicant who would be in a position to answer those questions. I'm not here to say that all those questions will get answered or that they'll get answered to everybody's satisfaction, including the DRB's satisfaction. But the folks will be here with the information that's being requested of the applicants here tonight. And that would be on October 11th. We're also going to be keeping the hearing on October 23rd in the hopes that between the 11th and the 23rd, the board will have heard everything they need to hear at that point, can close the hearing and go into deliberation. That's a hope. That's not a firm.
Your sound cut out.
It's hoped in terms of getting the information that the board needs to go into deliberative process and make a decision based on the facts and based on the town's zoning bylaws. So to sort of recap that, September 25th, 4:30, we'll just call it, is it the high school, Julie? Yes. The high school parking lot to get on a bus, to go to the site visit, if you want to go to the site visit, if you're interested in going. You don't need to go, but we wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to go and participate in the site visit process. There are minimum, I think everybody needs to wear long pants and boots at this point.
Yes.
So we're dealing with work sites, so long pants, boots are what you need to get on the bus to go to the site visit.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The last time they were asking for more safety gear than that, goggles, hard hats, things like that, those are now not on the
Those
list?
have been pulled off the table because operations won't be happening during the site visit. So the next date is October 11th, 6 o'clock for a continuation of the hearing, then October 23rd for a continuation of the hearing if it's needed and necessary. I hope, did everybody get that? Is that clear to everyone?
We have a bus?
And those will be, everybody online hear that?
Excuse me, I don't know if you're still taking questions, but Ryan Stevens and Matt Gorski had his hand up.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Two people on Zoom have had their hands up to ask a question. Ryan Stevens and Matt Gorski.
No clue. Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Maureen Stevens, you have a question? Comment?
She's still there, but maybe she's not there. And her hand's still up.
She's muted.
And Matt Gorski has his hand back up.
Any questions from the people on Zoom? Comments?
Yes, I had two, actually. One, I've looked over the maps that they submitted into their package there, and I have a heavy disagreement with the Dean Brook map, as that brook runs on our property, which abuts theirs, not under theirs. And that map shows that they're presenting to the DRB shows the stream is running on their property. The other thing is they're doing blasting without warning. Last week they did a blasting. I got no warning that it was going to happen, just a boom when it did. I'm maybe 500 yards from where they built that shed. So, just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments this evening? I would like to make a comment. I know that person had their hand up. I would like to thank you all for keeping this civil.
I think we need a motion to adjourn to the 11th.
No, we will. We will.
Okay. Okay.
For keeping this discussion civil and professional. I appreciate that. And I hope we can have the same level of civility at the next hearing. And I appreciate it and want to thank you all. Now I'll take a motion to
Can I just have one thing, Bob? Is it all right?
okay, John.
Thanks. So my name's Jim Carroll. I'm an attorney. I've represented Chester for quite a long time at this point. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've represented Chester for quite a while at this point, and it's been an honor, I must say. I mean, a really amazing town. And I want to echo what Bob said. It's really appreciated that people are showing up, saying their piece, putting it on the record, trying to get some answers, and allowing a process that needs to be completed through the DRB, which is sitting kind of in a judicial capacity. You know, it's the town has an enforcement arm, and it has this kind of judicial arm. And their job here is to take in the information, apply the zoning regulations, and determine whether or not a conditional use permit application, which is pending before it, is something that can and should or should not be allowed, and if it's allowed, what those conditions are going to be that will need to be complied with in connection with that. It's a quasi-judicial process, and they can only make the choices and decisions that get brought before them. They can't go outside of their jurisdictional authorities and powers. They can't unilaterally make enforcement choices. They're here basically to hear the permit application that's before it, make the decisions that are to be made. When it comes to enforcement and zoning enforcement, that gets initiated through a different process, and a notice of violation gets issued under those circumstances. That initiates a long, drawn-out process. It's not as simple as just issuing a Judicial Bureau ticket, or just, you can, but it requires hearings and hearing processes, particularly if there are any issues involved in the zoning enforcement process that require analysis of what the pre-existing uses are, what they have been, what the history of the property is. That itself is also a long, drawn-out process. The hope here is that, at least in hearing this conditional use application, some decisions can be made about whether things are going to be happening at the property that might improve them from the town standpoint and compliance with the zoning regulations, whether there's an entitlement to it or not. It's called an after-the-fact permit situation that may be sitting before the board at this particular point in time. But their duty here is to hear the permit application. And once they hear the permit application and they make a choice and a decision after deliberating, there's an appeal process. That goes to the environmental court. And from there, there's an appeal process to the Vermont Supreme Court. So there's a potential for this to be somewhat of a long, drawn-out process. And I just wanted to give a heads up to that so that expectations are at least built into it. But with the understanding that their frustrations are something that's clearly palpable, clearly real, and I'm sure the board gets that. But, and anyway, that's my thanks to the town of Chester, and just wanted to make sure that there was some sense of what it looks like from the DRB side. They're sitting as judges. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate it. I'll take a motion to well, the 25th is the site visit, and the October 11th is the next hearing date.
We need to
Take a motion.
You do need to say recess, please.
We're not closing the hearing. We're going into recess.
Jim, do you want to?
Sure, I can. You want me to just throw a motion out and see if somebody's interested in biting?
Okay.
So move to be in recess with the hearing, with a site visit to be set for September 25th at 4:30, meeting at the high school parking lot. The next hearing date to be set for October 11th at 6 o'clock here at the town hall, and a follow-up hearing date to be set for October 23rd at 6 o'clock here at the town hall, and move to be in recess pending the site visit and the next hearing.
I second that.
Moved by Jim, second by Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Recording stopped.